I would like to introduce to you the coordinator of Nexus Singapore, Dorjee Sun, who has an amazing story. Dorjee, are you here? Come on down. You're about to witness the development of the future of the world.
I'm glad there's no expectations. Actually, the thoughts that I was just putting together before I stepped up have changed dramatically after Ravi's really interventionalist experiment. And I'd like to start off by saying that I'll never forget the first sentence of my Nexus experience. So I was a newbie, I knew no one when I came last year. And I think I'm going to start naming it the Jonah prayer. When he tells everyone to close their eyes and imagine for a minute. Actually, he changed it from the last time. I'll never forget the first sentence. He said, and would you do it with me now, please? Would everyone close their eyes? Close their eyes for a minute. And imagine that everyone in this room has their back forever. And that imagine that everyone in this room is a family working together to fix the problems that this world faces forever. And then with that, I knew that I had to be involved ongoing. You can open your eyes now. And from literally having zero experience with Nexus, I knew, even though I was fairly limited in my experience with philanthropy, fairly limited in my experience with social entrepreneurship, you know, I knew that I had to get involved. And it's as easy as that. From that, 9 months later, I'm now coordinating the conference for Nexus in Singapore. So if anyone here travels through Singapore, please come. It's going to be in November. And we planned it because, and a dear friend, Aaron D'Souza, who's coordinating in Sydney, Australia for the 20th of October, you know, unfortunately he can't be here because of an operation, but, you know, we designed it so that people could come from the Northern Hemisphere through Australia and then up through Singapore, and then hopefully get to see some of that part of the world. Now, what's so amazing for me is the irony that this conference is being held at the UN. Because actually my first step to being a social entrepreneur happened by breaking in to a UN conference. I still remember it so clearly, and it was one of those defining moments. I think Nexus is the search for why, to chime on some of the comments of other people earlier tonight. And if you think about Viktor Frankl, who talks about man's search for meaning, and what it is that we actually search for, I think our generation's greatest challenge is we don't actually have a war to fight. You know, our war is internal. Our search is for meaning in our everyday life. And Nexus is that opportunity. You can have a conversation with people about the true why, the true north about what it is that you need to do. If you come here with your why, then you can search for the how and the who. And so that's why I think Nexus is so powerful. So what happened in 2007, I was 29 at the time, and my why was I'd witnessed orangutan and rainforest burning in Indonesia. And I watched them bring out carcasses of burnt orangutan still clutching their babies. And for me, sitting in Sydney, I just thought I could not let that continue. I had to do something. And as I searched and trolled through the web, I found that the United Nations was hosting a workshop on how to prevent deforestation and burning of forests using capital markets and carbon trading. And they were holding it in Australia, Cairns. And it was one of those moments when you're sitting at your computer. It's kind of like when you're sitting on a bus and you see a girl that you've got to ask out on a date but you don't have the courage to, and you're thinking about it and you know you should, and then she gets off the next station, you're like, damn it, I should have done something. Actually, my girlfriend's here, so I did ask her. But I was sitting at that computer just thinking, if I do not fly and try to get into this conference, I will regret it forever. And it could be the start of a journey that I don't know where it's going to take me, but I got to do it. And so I called up Germany because it was being organized out of the Secretariat. I still remember it was Barbara Black. And I was like, excuse me, could I please attend? And they said, no, you cannot attend. The UN conference has been closed for several months. You know, unfortunately, you're unable to go. And besides that, you know, what do you have to do with, are you a nation? No. Are you a journalist? No. Therefore, you're not invited. And so I, at that moment, decided I would seize my destiny. I would take that step, and I booked a flight and a room in the hotel in Cairns, the Hilton, where they were holding the conference. And I sat in the lobby waiting for delegates to take a smoke or a piss. And over the course of the 2 days, I became somewhat known. And what I learned, first of all, was if you shake hands with the guy after he comes out of the toilet, his hand's going to be wet. And also, if you have a conversation with him before he goes to the toilet, it's going to be a very fast conversation. But through the course of that, I then made friends with some of the delegates from Papua New Guinea, Indonesia, from some of the most forested countries in the world. And then actually got to the point where I'd snuck into the cocktail drink function which the United Nations holds, and I got frog marched out of the conference by the Australian security saying, you don't have a badge, you're not a nation, and you're not a journalist, what are you doing in there? At that point, the organizer of the conference was so annoyed with me, he said, look Dorjee, if you can get this permission signed off by the head of the Secretary of the Department of the Environment by 9 a.m. tomorrow, I'll let you attend the rest of the conference. And I pulled every contact that I had and managed to get that form signed. And I got in. Who would have then known that that would then have led to I'm a serial entrepreneur, I've started 8 companies, done 3 exits, that we would then facilitate, at the time, the biggest rainforest transaction. We managed to get $9 million to $432 million US dollars from Merrill Lynch to protect a forest in Indonesia. That was 2008. We managed to get Rio Tinto, the biggest mining company in the world, to invest $4 million to protect a forest in Australia. It's 7 years, 6 years, 7th year this year. Every year we have satellites taking photos, protecting the forest. It's a 99-year project. So my grandchildren, with luck, will hopefully still see this forest that we were able to enact. And we also have a project in Congo, which has 5,000 gorillas. And this is with a $5 billion commodities trading company out of Singapore, where we will protect it for 30 years, and we'll be selling carbon credits, which will be protecting forests with gorillas in it. And so this entire journey, the last 6 years, in the ups and the downs, the carbon market has collapsed. They found $4 billion of gold under our rainforest in Indonesia. There's just been a crazy cavalcade, including we made front cover of Time magazine, front cover of the Wall Street Journal, Time magazine, Hero of the Environment, all of these awards. And it all happened because in that search for meaning, the meaning, and I give credit to Sam, who gave me this thought just before, the why was more important than the how. And once you find that why, and that's what you can do here, and connect with people who support you, and everyone here has your back. And that's the power of Nexus. The second thing that I'd like to make a quick comment on is the UN. If you think about this, we are representing what I think is the next big generational shift. If you think about, as an amateur student of history, I always get fascinated by 1968. 1968, Columbia University was occupied. 1968, Martin Luther King was assassinated. Lyndon Johnson, Vietnam War, Bobby Kennedy assassinated. The whole country was tearing itself apart because they couldn't sever themselves from the past to the future, old generation to new generation. That's happening now, Arab Spring, except instead of just being in America, it's global. And all the emerging countries are all embroiled in this generational shift. But what's amplified these cycles is technology. The leverage that we have now through Twitter, through Facebook, through social media has intensified the pendulum of change. And what we have to do as custodians of the future, as Nexus, is help guide this ship in the right direction. A really interesting realization for me was after doing conservation work for 6 years, we found that actually mankind is a force of nature now. And that force of nature is changing nature. And so in order to protect nature, we have to change mankind's nature. So the last thing that I'll talk about is called Who Gives? Who Gives is a concept where the Singapore government was kind enough to, in November last year, the Singapore government Singapore was found to be the least happy country on earth, the least emotional country on earth. And as a result, they then invested in bringing people like myself the opportunity to then create a giving community. And the question was this: what if we also had a giving rating, a social credit rating similar to a credit rating? In Singapore now, if you go and catch the train before 7:30 a.m, you get to travel for free because they want to reduce the crush during peak hour. But what if you gave, or you were a nurse, or you were in a career where you gave to the community and you got to travel for free all the time? 85% of housing in Singapore is provided by the Housing Development Board, the HDB. But what if you could get cheaper home loans and cheaper homes because you were a good neighbour, because your giving index was higher? What if on LinkedIn, when you're searching for a job and you have the highest giving rating, you find a job more easily because you have an alignment of giving, the social credit index aligns? And what if when you're giving out bonuses within a company, you actually rated the bonuses based on the index of giving back to the community or to the company that you give, rather than just how much money you make? So I've spoken to 50 different companies already, and they're all interested in experimenting. The Singapore government has given us funding, and on 1 June next year, we're going to be presenting to 100 mayors at the World City Summit in Singapore. And actually, this is it's a newborn baby that's an open source project. So I'd like to officially launch it here at Nexus and invite everyone to participate. And my last point would simply just be, whatever you imagine you can do it. And Nexus is the starting point for your journeys.